top of it, and that's screen share.
Oh wow, that's whack. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Sorry. Just got man. Sorry about the lighting too. It's sunlight. My wife got all these plants up here and she don't close the curtain, so I can't control the light. So if you're into lighting and all that, you're just gonna have to be frustrated for a second because the sun is like all in my grill. But anyway, this is the best I can do. Now let's just start the show. Again, working out some kinks. If you listened last week, there were more kinks. And you see, it's fewer kinks every time. It's like I'm slowly getting all the kinks under control. I sound like a right-wing Republican. I'm going to get rid of these kinks, all the kinks, and have a pure, God-fearing country. Anyway, I cracked myself up. This is let's just clean this slate and start again. This is Bro Diallo show, broadcasting not out of Q. I'm broadcasting on Q4 radio, but not in Q4 studio because we are under a nationwide quarantine and a nationwide pandemic that is the direct result of the absolute incompetence and corruption of the Trump administration and the arrogance of a lot of individuals who believe that the pandemic is a hoax, that, they think masks are somehow a detriment to their liberty. And where are all these people who say that mask was a detriment to their liberty? Where the hell were they when the Patriot Act was signed? How come y'all got more smoke for wearing a minor preventative device such as a cloth mask? Where the hell were y'all when the Patriot Act was signed? Where the hell were y'all when the 1994 crime bill was signed? Don't you know every single constitutional right that you have, the entire Bill of Rights, except for that one amendment that says you don't have to house soldiers in your home? There's only one amendment, because that's one of our 10 fundamental rights in this country, that we have rights as citizens. It's written in the Constitution that we don't have to house U.S. soldiers in our home. So when the National Guard or the U.S. military marches down our street to enforce curfews or enforce, as Trump says, he's going to use the military to enforce. The sound went out? Where? I can't work like this. You said the sound went out? Who said the sound went out? Don't play with me. William, you said the sound went out? Let me know something. Anyway, the people who say that, well, when Trump said he's going to use the U.S. military to enforce his vaccine program. See, William, stop playing with me. Y'all make me sound like Soldier Boy. Tell him, don't play with me. He used to say it all the time. I thought that was really cute when he would say that. But seriously, don't play with me. He said that he's going to use the U.S. military because I guess he's defunded everything. I mean, Trump has defunded the UN. He's defunding the CDC. He got rid of the pandemic task force. He defunded. So Trump has defunded every government agency except for the Secret Service, which keeps his bloated behind safe, and the military damn near just about. And so he's going to use the military to distribute his rapidly produced, untested vaccine on the U.S. populace. And the same white folks that won't wear masks because it's their liberty, their personal sovereignty not to wear a mask. Those same people, when Trump gets on the stage and says, we're going to have a vaccine in 2 days. And he's like, rush the process. Give me a vaccine before Election Day. And I'm going to have the military mandate and give everybody vaccines. You're gonna have soldiers with M1 rifles and sniper guns and tanks on your door, banging on your door like, yo, the vaccine is here that Trump promised that he rushed, a rushed vaccine, which means we didn't have time to do safety trials and see, even though Fauci said it could be 2 to 3 years before there's a viable vaccine, we're here and we got a 2-week vaccine. And the military is going, and the same people that refuse to wear a mask because it violates their liberty are at Trump rallies clapping for this. Like, hey, come on with the Trump elected political vaccine. Rushed. He literally said, hurry up with that vaccine, rush it. That means cut corners. That means you're not going to even be looking at side effects or after effects or long-term effects. And the same people, I have to say this for my own sanity. You don't have to listen because I'm going to say the same thing I done said 2, 3, 4 times. The same people that said they won't wear a mask when in public because it is a violation of their liberty are cheering when the U.S. president says that he's going to use the U.S. military to distribute a rush vaccine door to door for every American mandate. I tell you, this ain't got nothing to do with freedoms. Let me tell you about the average white person. I'm sorry to be telling white secrets, but sometimes I tell black secrets too. So I know white folks, I'm a snitch, I'm a Takashi on white folks today. The average white person in the United States understands, and they might not be wrong. Hell, history has proven them right. The average white person understands, listen, the U.S. Constitution, the territory of the United States, all of its infrastructure and everything was set up for white folks. It was set up as Dr. Claude Anderson would say, it was set up for the pleasure, survival, comfort, advancement of white people. That's what it was here for. That's the only reason it exists. That rapist, that murderous rapist, enslaver, George Washington and all the other pedophilic monsters. I mean, if all these founding fathers, you know, Trump told one truth his whole time as president. Trump said, if you're taking down Confederate monuments because they were slave owners, he said, eventually we'll have to tear down every hero in America. Eventually, every hero in America, every American hero will be torn down. If we start with the Confederates and we say, well, why are you taking down the Confederates? Well, they were racist. They were rapists. They were murderers. They were enslavers, Indian killing colonizers. If you start with the Confederates, he said, eventually, every great white man is going to be taken down off the building, and most great white women. Well, white men don't really acknowledge the contributions of white women, and white women are pissed off because white women made some serious contributions to the systems and institutions of global white domination. But he said, eventually, we won't have anything. You're going to take down the Washington Monument, and then we're going to look in the history books and found that the most benevolent white president, Abraham Lincoln, said, if I could end the war without ending slavery, I'd do it. And if I believe that the black man is inherently inferior to the white man, and that if I could just package all these slaves up after centuries of free labor, if I could package them up and send them off to Africa, if that was viable, I'd do it. So Trump said, we can't, if the Confederates are the canary, or the white canary in the coal mine. If history is going to cancel Confederates, history is going to cancel all white history because it's all horrific. And I'm like, wow, Trump is the most insightful thing Trump said. Y'all looking at these shadows and shit. Now, Facebook is wild. What do you want from me? Sorry, Facebook. I see it's what do you call it? Delayed or whatever. What do you want from me? I keep asking y'all that. I think, but that's just excusing myself. But I digress. I digress. This is an S-hole country. And anyway, I even forgot my point in that is because every time I look up, my little tech setup is glitching out on me. So, and now the sun's coming out. Anyway, I lost my point, so let's just move on. Trump's incompetent. Due to Trump's incompetence. And that's all this is. I mean, can you imagine if Trump was president during the most recent Ebola outbreak? And I was talking about white folks. Sorry, I got to finish this point. The ancestors won't let me walk away from it. So going all the way back, I'm telling white folks secret. One of y'all secrets. White folks got a lot of secrets. And none of them involve the Illuminati or reptilians. If you would just read white anthropologists and white psychologists and white philosophers, you can understand white folks instead of reading these people telling us that, you know, this system of white domination we live under is somehow a byproduct of supernatural forces, when it's not. But anyway, I'm delaying getting to the secret because I don't want to get in trouble. But I got to tell white folks' secret so you can really understand what's going on here. How you can have the same white people that say that they believe that a new world order is coming and a police state is coming and that they're going to lose their sovereignty, will then turn around in the same sentence and say Blue Lives Matter. Or the same people that says I won't wear a mask because of liberty are cheering for a president and plan to vote for a president said that he's going to use the U.S. military on U.S. soil to enforce a mandated vaccine, a rush vaccine. Because white folks understand, and I was about to say white folks believe, but white folks know and understand that the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. territory, all the rights and privileges and infrastructure was set up for them. It's theirs. And they believe that the Constitution is there to serve white people. And the only reason they talk about liberty and justice for all, and they include everybody else in that, the only reason they do that is because it still serves them to pretend to be inclusive. It serves them when they get to pretend to be inclusive. I'm gonna start another live on Facebook because the other one died. What do you want from me? I have to stop saying that. It makes me sound like a jerk. I'm just frustrated and I'm taking it out on my listeners. But I think YouTube is good. And of course, Q4 Radio, Q4.org, TuneIn app, Q4 Radio, QUE4 space radio. But white people understood that this country is here for them and them exclusively. And even when they do stuff like emancipation and Civil Rights Act and all these progressive reforms, ultimately the average white person has rightfully concluded that this is just to make us, this is PR, this is window dressing ultimately. But if the state isn't giving me special advantage, then the state is illegitimate. If the Constitution is not preserving my advantage, then the Constitution is illegitimate. So the same people that says, I love America and scream USA, USA and wave the US flag and got all these flag bumper stickers and flags everywhere, those exact same white folks will turn around and dump on the Constitution and violate all of the tenets of the US Constitution. Because they say, you know, the Constitution is here for me. I'm not here for the Constitution. And me, meaning exclusively white. So as Mos Def said, if we start keeping pace, they will change up the tempo. We start keeping pace, they change up the tempo. So white folks, go back and look at this history. It's really incredible. White people would say they can't give us freedom because it's not in the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. And they would argue states' rights. And they were like, listen, we've got nothing against black folks, but they can't vote. They're not human. They can't sit on the front of the bus. It's just Constitution. It's paperwork. It's operational. It's infrastructure. It's just the law. We're just obeying the law. And then, you know, civil rights, Black Revolution, uprising, decolonial movements, all this, and then all of a sudden, okay, we changed the law. Then white folks was like, to hell with the law. The law is being tyrannical. The law is overreaching. So that when they were using the law to oppress us, white folks were hella lawful. But when we used those same laws to give us some rights and some access, mobility, and relief from direct white aggression, all of a sudden they were like, forget the law. It's the same thing with the police. White folks love the police if the police are committing atrocities against black folks. But the moment the police stand up and start to enforce any level of justice, like when the cops or the National Guard went to Little Rock, Arkansas and say, let this little colored girl into this here old, redneck white trash school. And the police were like, well, I'm just enforcing the law. They wanted to kill the police. They were attacking the police. So it ain't about being lawful. It's not about Constitution. It's about white pathology, white pathological insecurity. And they will at the same day, white folks will go from one day trying to pass a constitutional amendment saying it's illegal to burn the flag, it's illegal to burn the Constitution. And at that same rally, they'll be wearing, flag boxer briefs made of the U.S. flag, and they'll be selling Constitution or Bill of Rights toilet paper to wipe their butts, all in the same thing, because it ain't got nothing to do with rights or wrongs. It ain't got nothing to do with laws. It ain't got nothing to do with, it's just pathological white aggression. And the Constitution will not protect Black folks ultimately, because white folks are like, the moment the Constitution is not allowing me, and it ain't just about giving them privilege. I hate that word privilege, because this is not privilege. This is pathology. Can you imagine you believing that you having privilege, you having an greater access to resources, greater mobility in the society, you have more opportunities to make mistakes and less harsh punishments when you make mistakes or break laws. The punishment for you is a much lesser degree than it would be for someone else. You have all that. And what you decide to do with that is to lynch the people who don't have that and cut off their genitals and mutilate them. Or you have more than enough food than you could ever eat, but you still deny people and you let people go hungry. You have more housing than you could ever live in. You have a housing glut, an overwhelming amount of housing, but yet you allow for millions of people to sleep in the streets. You have technology that can allow people to communicate, and you use that technology to spread lies, falsehoods, and dehumanizing images and rhetoric. That's not a privilege. That's pathological. Because a sane, healthy person who has quote unquote privilege, like my oldest son has privileges that my younger son does not have, because he's older. Well, he's an adult now, but as he was getting older, he would get more and more privileges. And he didn't use those privileges to lord over his younger brother. The first thing he did is that when he started to exercise his privilege, he wanted to share it. Like, what good? His mind is, what's good is being able to have this extra amount of trust, these extra amount of resources. He was allowed to go out and get a little job and all these wonderful things. And one thing he would do when he got his little money and satisfied his little needs, he turned to his little brother and was like, yo, is something you want? Get you something too. Because not only do I get the things that I want, make me feel good, when I see you getting what you want, getting what you need, it makes me comfortable. Or even if it ain't that benevolent, he's like, well, I buy myself a video game. If I give my brother a little something, then I can enjoy my video game in peace. I don't have to worry about him in my face. That's what privilege looks like. Privilege looks like, wow, I got all this food, all these blessings. I had some homeboys who were back in the day. They were in the streets, right? And if you know anything about the street economy, it's a boom bust economy, just like the larger economy, except there are no bailouts when the bus comes. And it would be time he would be balling out of control. Cars, money, boom. And the first thing he wanted to do when he was on the upswing is he wanted to share the wealth. Like, come kick it with me. I got you. That was his favorite. I got you. Don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. I got you. Because that was privilege looks like. That's how sane people deal with privilege. They want to spread that shit around. A pathological person will come and see you hungry and be like, I got food, I got money. And in fact, not only does the food and money and shelter make me feel comfortable, it gives me added joy to know that you are lacking. That's not privilege, that's pathology. We are not trying to deal with, but I've given y'all, if you follow the Bro Diallo show, I've been telling y'all this, stop saying white privilege. Stop saying it. They don't even share it with each other. Look at how the financial in Greece, there was a financial collapse of Greece, the home of white civilization, Greeks, who gave white folks everything from philosophy to basic hygiene that they got from Africans. But that's another. They gave white folks the founding of white civilization, the Greeks, on to the Romans, on to the Brits, and on to global white domination. And when Greece collapsed, did all the other white countries say, oh, that's our motherland, that's the cradle of our civilization? No. They laughed and pointed out, look how incompetent you are. And as soon as Greeks started to recover, what did they start doing? Persecuting Africans who were going through 10 times worse. Did they develop empathy? Like, we know people coming from North Africa trying to get on these boats and come here to seek a better life. We know what that's like because we had a financial, the bottom fall out of our economy, and we weren't invaded. We weren't even colonized. We were just irresponsible. Y'all impoverished because of us and our machinations, right? Did they develop? No. Right now, Greeks are throwing black folks in the ocean, pregnant mothers trying to migrate to escape European colonial fallout. So, you know, whenever you get to look at, wow, these white people seem to be contradictory, mad contradictory. And then we turn around and it's like, oh, you're privileged. That ain't privilege, that's pathology. And white folks will, like, you know, they don't give a damn about all this stuff. They pretend they'll use the Constitution to mass incarcerate us and deny us rights, access, mobility, housing. Like, I'm homeless. Well, you know, you don't have the paperwork for a home. You got to have a deed. It's like, well, no, I don't have a deed, but I have a need. And there's an empty house that nobody's using. Oh, you can't do that because of the law. It's not that I have anything against you. It's just on the paper. And then if we mobilize a movement and change that paper and say, well, it's illegal to have people, you know, housing is a basic human right. And if there's an abundance of property, then we will allow the state to confiscate that property and redistribute it to the unhoused. And then we're going to put it in law. And a judge is going to bang his gavel, or the congressman or the legislator, senator is going to sign this paper. And the same law that you used to keep me out of house, now there's an even more legitimate, modern, updated law that allows me to get in the house. And then watch how unlawful white folks become, because they've never been about law and order. No, it's about white aggression. Notice I didn't say white power or white wealth, because they got wealth. In fact, they could give everybody a house and it would increase their wealth. They could give everybody a universal basic income and increase their wealth. You know, I was just reading this report about cooperative economics. And they said, if you work for like Amazon could quadruple the income of every single one of its employees and its giggers and all that. And still, Bezos would still be the richest man in the world. He could increase all of his workers' income by 4 to 10 times, depending on their income level, and still be the richest man in the world. So it ain't about being a rich man. You know, they get as much pleasure from denying others as they do from having. That's not privilege, that's pathological. But I digress. In a shithole country. Anyway, where was I? Oh, I got in trouble because I have a video that went viral for me, which means like 20 people saw it, where I said that Trump's fascism is no different than Obama's neoliberalism in the ultimate grand scheme of things. And I said, you know, Trump's fascist drone bombs versus Obama's neoliberal drone bombs. So I said Obama's fascism is, you know, what I said, you know, Obama's like that seductive, I don't know what the name is, that silky pimp that can manipulate and oppress you and have you loving him. Whereas Trump is that gorilla pimp that got to beat you down and get you to walk the stroll and threaten your life on a daily basis. And some egghead, some damn nerds got in, well, actually, they're telling me about what fascism is. I know what fascism is. I got a degree in political science. I know what fascism is, but my point was the ultimate outcome, if on the other end, you have the same outcome on the other end, it's really the intricacies of the other side are not that important. Only saying that because if people believe that election cycles will end these horrendous conditions, which they won't. And I'm acknowledging that you can't vote your way out of this. So they just took it out of context. So they want to say that Obama's not a fascist. And I say, right, Obama's not a fascist, but Obama engaged in fascism. How? Because I'll just run it down real quick because I can't argue with every egghead on the internet because I'm an egghead on the internet too. I'll end up talking to myself, looking crazy. So the basic tenet or the basic motivation of fascism is, aside from the ultra nationalism and the strong leader and demonizing immigrants, is the recovery of a lost great era. All fascists promise to return, whether it's the Reich, to return the people to a lost era, make America great, make Germany great. And it's the neoliberal or laissez-faire capitalism that Obama does that creates the yearning for the lost era. So the lost era, nobody trips off of a lost era if it's all good just now. Like I have homeboys that grew up with me, and shout out to East Hills Village, that grew up with me in public housing. And, you know, some of us, we learn how to conjugate verbs and how to do long division. And we stayed in school basically. And we're able to elevate, you know, and I ain't rich, but, you know, I don't live in public housing on Section 8 Medicaid, you know, eating, you know, wish burgers, you know, eating butter sandwiches, butter sugar sandwiches, and fried bologna. I'm at least beyond that, right? And so when I get together with the brothers that aren't incarcerated or dead, that made it out through projects, I never use that language, but just so y'all can see what I'm saying, we don't reminisce about going back to we don't yearn to go back to that projects. You know, we don't like, oh man, you know, remember the moldy carpeting? Remember the ultra thin walls? They had us all stacked on top of each other, you know, impoverished, undereducated, under-resourced person beside you, on top of you, all around you. Remember those days? Remember the filthy, we had stray cats all over the hood. I actually like stray cats, that's not, but the mice infestation, the corrupt management company that would steal refrigerators when the government would disperse new appliances to the projects, and they would take them, bring them in one truck, and then another truck would pull up and take. Remember that? Yeah, we don't yearn to go back to that because we are in a better place. So when you're in a better place than where you came from, you don't learn, you don't say again, you know, make America great again. You don't desire, oh, bring back the traditional values, bring back the gold time, good time religion, bring it back. You don't yearn for that stuff when you're in a better place. You only yearn for that stuff for a better past, whether that past is an actual past or some imagined past. You only yearn for that when where you are just now is messed up and you don't really have any capacity or vision to look forward. Then you start, oh man. So I know maybe if I was homeless, addicted to crack, I know some of my homies that are in penitentiary, locked up. They probably sit there like, they remember all the good things about the project. Oh, all my homies was there. I was able to come and go as I pleased. My girl, I remember I had this cute little girlfriend. Oh, I remember those days. I see the people that just meet your friends that were popular in high school, or your tormentors who were popular in high school, who didn't go anywhere in life. And I'm not even speaking from a materialist or capitalistic point of view. I'm talking about in terms of didn't have fulfilling relationships, didn't go on to expand their understanding and their contributions and impact on the world. That didn't go nowhere. From a socialistic Pan-African perspective, didn't advance in life. Even if they made a lot of money, they still got that backwards ass mentality, that small mentality. The people that didn't go anywhere, and they were really popular in high school but didn't go anywhere, they yearn for, oh, remember I won that touchdown. Remember I was captain of the cheerleaders. Remember. Versus people that move on behind that, they don't want to, you can't tell them, wouldn't you love to go back to high school? They say, hell no. So it's the same thing in a fascist country. One of the cornerstones of fascism is the promises of a return, not moving forward, but going back to a great era that was lost and bygone. But you can't have fascism without the neoliberals, because the neoliberals are the one that comes and upends government regulation. They upend the social safety net. They up in and take away the people's benefits. They allow for the emergence of this exploitation economy that they call it a gig economy, and got people working harder and longer for less and less. And then those people are like, oh man, it's really bad now, but I remember my dad had a good old factory job and he was a union man. Not to mention that your dad was toiling away. You don't care. Your dad would come home and drink, beat your mama, and smack you around too. But no, you were like, oh, my dad he was a real American. So these are symbiotic ideologies and policies. You don't get in there. And now fascism has got people yearning to return to neoliberalism. Biden says nothing will fundamentally change when I become president. People are like, fine, I'll take no change over daily nightmares and horrors. And then when he comes back with his neoliberalism, he's going to bring about somebody who's even worse than Trump. Biden is going to breed and lay the groundwork and lay the foundations for somebody that's worse than Trump. How do I know? All you got to do is look in recent history. Look who came after Carter, who started off as a liberal progressive, but then when he saw the tide of the country changing, he tried to be tough, militaristic. Nobody bought this. It was a scam, but he tried to be like, I'm tough on crime, and I'm a strong man militarily. And it started all this, and then he begat Reagan. And then we got the quote unquote liberal Bill Clinton, and he begot George W. Bush, who was a nightmare. We didn't think it could get worse. Remember, George W. Bush, they said the W stood for worst president ever. Now George W. Bush is a folk hero amongst liberals. It's crazy. And so then we thought that Obama would bring us out of the nightmare of the Bush years. But all he did in 8 years was lay the groundwork for Trump, because he's a neoliberal. Neoliberalism begats fascism. What did Hitler do when he took power? He deregulated. Look at Hitler's economic policies. Look beyond the racism and xenophobia and genocide and all of that stuff that we associate with fascism. Look at the structure of the state and the relationships he had with big industry. And you will find that even though Hitler's rhetoric aligns with Trump, Hitler's governing tactics and policies, aside from the wars of aggression and genocide, but I mean how he just ran. Hitler made the trains run on time. Remember, Obama would have took care of it. Hitler was an idiot, but his regime, the Third Reich, were good, decent bureaucrats. Look at Hitler's public health program and Obama's CARE Act. Look at how Hitler dealt with public health, and look at Obama's policy. So neoliberalism, look at Hitler's deregulation and his relationship with big corporations, and from IBM to not just German corporations like Farman, but Ford Motor Companies, and look at Obama's. So if you take Hitler and take away the racism, overt racism and rhetoric, you got Obama. If you take Obama and you pile on overt racism and rhetoric and nationalist rhetoric and a desire to go back, you got Trump. But the gooey center, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a corrupt political system? The gooey center, the outcome is ultimately the same. How we feel about our conditions, how we feel is different, but the material reality is the same. And I'm in a third world country, and a drone bomb drops on my head. How is it any different if it was Trump or Obama, Democrat or Republican, that ordered that drone bomb? So I know there's a difference between fascism and neoliberalism. I know there's a difference on paper. But to the people suffering, to the people dying from the Congo, the colonized, the oppressed people, it's kind of like you on a plantation, you're a slave, chattel slave on a plantation. And your plantation master is a Protestant versus a Catholic. And they both whipping, raping, and exploiting. And then I say, what's the difference? And somebody, there's a lot of difference. If you look at Martin Luther's thesis, Yeah, okay, yeah, but I'm saying when we distill it down, when we boil it down to its essence. But I digress. I know I'm just gonna make more people mad at me that like to play footsies and patty cakes with terms definition. Like sometimes it matters in the context that I was using it. I gotta move on. So I just gotta tell Obama begot Trump. Biden will beget if Obama, and I'm gonna get into this later, so I guess I don't have to get into it now. Let's move on. The mental of a black man has been torn. Phyllis Myers just want to keep on. Anyway, let's talk. Today's show. Let's go into today's show for something else breaks down over here. Today's show is Vote, Goddamnit. That's the name of the show. Vote, Goddamnit. I'm sick of having this argument every 4 years. I'm sick of the black demagogues jumping up talking about we don't need to vote. And black folks, you ain't slick, you ain't hardcore, you ain't conscious if you don't vote. If you're a U.S. citizen and you have a capacity to engage the U.S. political system and you don't, well, you might not be an idiot. You might be smart. Because depending on your position, let me tell you why black leaders who say don't vote tell you not to vote. Because a lot of black leaders are demagogues. They thrive off of black suffering. Like the Nation of Islam used to prevent its cult members from voting, which is common in cults. Like the Nation of Islam discourages its members from voting and engaging the political system because they want their people isolated. They want their people to not look to themselves or to other people outside of the leadership of the cult for empowerment, relief. They don't want their people to assert their will. They want broken people. It's like people would like to talk about the Nation of Islam. Oh, he turned a lot of brothers around. He got them out of prison. But I would argue that the Nation of Islam didn't turn brothers around for prison. They targeted brothers in prison. Why? Because brothers who don't have options are easier to manipulate. They're easier to exploit. You know who else loves to work with ex-cons? Corrupt construction companies. Why? Because the ex-con doesn't have a voice. The ex-con doesn't have the right to vote. The ex-con doesn't have options and opportunities. So they basically take whatever you give them. So you see an organization that says, oh, we target ex-cons. You have to say, are they empowering? Are they giving support? Are they allowing those brothers to move on? Or are they somehow taking advantage of a vulnerable segment of the population? And we think it's something turning their lives around when it's really stagnating and stifling their lives. Even the most famous member of the nation, look at Malcolm. Y'all don't read Malcolm. I can tell y'all don't read Malcolm because y'all don't acknowledge, y'all act like Malcolm was all the way Malcolm the whole time. There was a time Malcolm was saying utter nonsense where Malcolm was talking about Yaqub. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us. Now, it's harder to see the madness in what some of the things he was saying because it was encased in a lot of rational assertions. But ultimately, Malcolm started off saying that God was going to destroy wicked America. And Black people's salvation was not in working together and organizing and building up Pan-Africanism, defending ourselves. He said our ultimate salvation rested in Allah passing judgment on America. And that's how we will be saved. Listen to his early recordings and read his early writings. Judgment is coming upon wicked America. And then when he exited the cult, he was like, wait a second, I got to work. He's like, I got to work. Before his main mission that he said was to bring people into the Nation of Islam so that when the hellfire rains down, when Allah brings judgment on the wicked America, the Muslims will have some type of protection. I don't know if it was a dome or a mothership. They changed what that protection looks like over time. But it was really just, to say the least, to be respectful as I possibly can, it was not a viable plan. It was not a rational solution or teaching. And when he left the nation, he was like, yo, we need Pan-African coordination and cooperation. That's why he went all over the world and met with African leaders and say, let's coordinate. That's why, I'm going to say this again, Malcolm went around this country for over a decade during Jim Crow, saying the white man is the devil, telling black people to get guns and arm yourself, and talking right in white folks' place. He said, and I quote, kill that dog. He said, if white folks sick their police dogs on you, kill that dog. You know how they white folks is about their dog. And Malcolm was untouched. But the moment Malcolm said, I'm a secular, I'm creating a secular organization, and you don't have to be a Muslim to join, his rhetoric actually softened. Malcolm was talking about politics and bureaucracies and negotiations and research and coordination, cooperation, reaching across not just religious lines, but reaching across borders. Malcolm calmed all the way down and was speaking rationally. And that's when they were like, we got to kill him. He got to go. Because we don't, that white devil and America must be destroyed. Allah will destroy America. They were like, oh yeah, whatever. Keep an agent on him, keep tabs on him, but whatever. But the moment he says secularism, Pan-Africanism, rational, organizing, practical, pragmatic, advancing of African interest across the globe without any waiting on Allah or any divine supernatural occurrence, that's when he became a threat. But I digress. The show is full, goddammit. And I get a lot of, every 4 years, I got to go through this same nonsense that I said. If you are a black person who is in a position to vote, you are a U.S. citizen or naturalized or however you got your citizenship and right to vote. And you don't engage in your local political system and you don't exercise your right to vote, you are a reactionary. I'm sorry. And I got some teachers out here. I got some people I respect and look up to that are on the whole don't vote. And like I said, the reason why some of these demagogues but Farrakhan now, he not only says you can vote if you're a member of the nation, he now literally endorses political candidates. What do you want from me? But it used to be. I'm sorry. What's his name? Umar Johnson. I don't vote. The reason they don't want you to vote is because voting, a person takes a certain mindset or mentality, a certain point of view. So, and the people who engage in those type of action, they tend to build on each other. If you do something as innocuous as voting, before you vote, you tend to start paying attention to politics. And if you tend to start paying attention to politics, you tend to start paying attention to the outcome of politics, which is the status quo, the physical material conditions around you. And you start to pay attention to that, it starts to drive you to certain conclusions. But people who are disengaged from the political process, very seldom do you find someone who is sincerely disengaged from the political process, who is seriously engaged in any other type of quote unquote political movement, because politics is in everything. Politics, everything is political. Marriage is political. Education, what profession you go into. I don't care if you are working construction. Politics is embedded in the, from union politics to regulation to zoning. You go into psychology. My wife is a community psychologist. I worked in healthcare for years and years. I worked on political campaigns. Everything is political. So if I can get you to disengage from the most fundamental, basic, weak booty politics, how you gonna do? How you gonna skip kindergarten and you gonna go straight to the university? You mean to tell me if you're gonna liberate black folks, you're gonna have to be engaged in some of the most revolutionary, complex, painful, long-term, long visionary politics the world has ever seen. but you don't do the most basic fundamental politics, whether you think it's beneath you or you think it's ineffective, which both of those conclusions are fallacious. Voting is not beneath you, and voting does change things. And I know y'all hate to hear that. And y'all gonna want to take away my radical card. And I'd rather have my radical card taken away than lose my rational card. So, why do I say vote? Voting does change things. And let's talk about the Flint water crisis for just a second to show you that voting changed things. Flint went through this cycle of having Republican, Democrat governors, right? So in 91 to 2002, they had a Republican. And then from 2011 to 2018, they had a Republican. I can't go through all this list. Because actually online, if you're really interested, they got lists going back to the 1800s, like Whig parties. Like Michigan has had Whig party. That party doesn't even exist anymore. But let me bring it up because I'm running out of time. So in 2011, and the names of these pigs don't even matter. In 2011 to 2018, and from 2002, 91, 2002, and 2011, 2018, Michigan had a Republican administration, which means Flint is in Michigan. It's a city in Michigan. And each time there was a Republican in office, that Republican took steps to erode the political power of Flint. I mean, it happened in Detroit and other places too, but we're just focused. I'm telling you how voting does make a difference. And so there was a brief in between those two Republican administrations. There was a Democratic administration. I think that came from the Obama boost. Black folks got a little extra political under Obama. More so, Black folks were voting in record numbers in the Obama era. Of course, Obama quickly demobilized us. But anyway, those Republican administrations would work to take away the self-governing ability of Black cities and counties in Michigan. And they would put emergency managers in charge. And the emergency managers ran the city budget. So whoever the elected officials, if they couldn't set budget priorities or disperse the funds, then what are you governing? Because what is politics? Politics is all about the acquisition and distribution of resources. That's what politics is when you boil it down. And so under these Republican administrations, because not enough people got out and voted for, again, in their own interest, their short-term interest, the Republican administration is literally, the Flint water crisis was not an environmental crisis. It was a political crisis that harmed the environment and harmed people. And so, and you don't hear people talking about Flint. Some people say Flint still has dirty waters, but if you are to believe the environmental protection agencies and other oversight agencies, Flint water, since the water crisis started in 2014 and 2020, ultimately, and 2019, June of 2019, Flint was officially declared to have clean water because under Republican administration did not prioritize addressing Flint's crisis. The Republican administration that caused the Flint water crisis decided to deny, to cover up, and then to try to escape any type of litigation or criminal charges. That's all they did, duck and cover, run. But they didn't care because the Republicans are overtly racist. A lot of other things, but I mean, it's a predominantly Black town. They're not going to vote for us anyway. But then they got a Democrat in office, and under the Democrat, Whitmer, and actually the governor that addressed the water crisis, there's still some problems. There's still some people saying she ain't come through like she said she would. But it's further along. But she was the governor that those rednecks were going to kidnap. They were going to kidnap her, and Trump was making light of that. But she set aside $600 million in escrow to begin settling claims, legal and financial claims against the state of Illinois and the city of Flint by its residents. She's returning Flint back over to the elected officials, meaning that the residents of Flint will be able to vote for their administrators. Instead of having a manager, they'll actually have a mayor and real governance. And that means they're giving local budget control back to the citizens, quote unquote, or back to the elected representative of the citizens. So that's not liberation. That's not going to free people. That's not going to end police brutality. That's not reparations. That's not going to address the cycles of discrimination and under-resourced or the problems with the schools. But do you want to fight for liberation with lead in your water, or do you want to fight for liberation without lead in your water? And sometimes when you're going to the polls, that's what you're voting against. You're not voting for Democrats or for Republicans. You're voting for, hey, what is their policy on emergency management? What is their policy on local budget control? So I don't like this person, or this person has a history of doing this bad thing and that, but this particular issue, I'm going to be cold, distant, and calculating. If this administration gets in, I'm going to end up with lead-laced water. If this administration, along with all the problems that still exist that I have to work on, if this administration gets in, then I'm going to have to work on all the problems that existed, plus the new problem of lead in the water. So when you're going to the polls and when you're voting, number one, things do change for better or for worse. But a lot of times, especially Black folks, our age, my age, we and younger than me, we are beneficiaries of previous struggles that we didn't participate in. So a lot of things we were born with, a lot of rights and a lot of the conditions we were born into, we didn't contribute in trying to create. So we take a lot of things for granted. And the reason we take it for granted is not because we're bad people. It's because we're not properly culturally oriented or educated to understand what it means. I mean, I've had so-called conscious, educated Black people sit in front of me and tell me, ain't nothing changed. And I'm like, from when are you counting? Since we've been in this country, nothing has changed. Like, my mother started having kids at 14 years old. No, 15. I'm not my mother's first child. She got pregnant with me when she was 16. She got pregnant with my sister who's a year and some months older, when she was 15. 15 or 14. I mean, the numbers get jumped, but I was a baby. What do you want from me? Anyway, so one of the good things to come for that is I knew my great-grandparents well. My great-grandma Bowie and great-grandpa Sonics Bowie. I know them very well. My grandmother, she just turned 90 years old last week. They came up in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Louisiana. So I am less than a generation removed from Jim Crow. My grandparents, my grandmother, and my great aunt and my great grandparents were born into and raised and lived more than half their lives under Jim Crow. So Jim Crow is not just February Black History Month stuff to me. And so to have a Black person walking around here in 2020 who claims to be historically educated, to say ain't nothing has changed, everything's the same. And listen, I am a Pan-African revolutionist, so I'm not satisfied with the conditions of the world. The economic, social, cultural, the power dynamics, you can't find one relationship, powered relationship. The borders, colonialism, neo-colonialism. I'm not satisfied with the state of the world. People tell me all the time I'm so negative because if I'm on social media, I'm ranting and trying to work out how we can change all the relationships in the world. based on power and resources. So I'm not a content or satisfied person, but I don't need to pretend that the state that I'm in is identical to the state of Sonic's Bowie, who was literally trying to raise a family under Jim Crow and the Great Depression. You know, I don't have to pretend like nothing has changed in order to call for more change or fundamental change. But like I said, Kwame Ture said the greatest thing, the worst thing a person can be is ungrateful. So anyway, we have lived under conditions that we didn't have to bleed and die for. You know, and some of y'all take for granted drinking out of whatever water fountain you want, or being able to go up in white folks' stores, and then many of y'all say, oh, integration was horrible. Yeah, integration was a mistake. But there's some other things that fell by the wayside along with desegregation. You know, because yeah, sitting at white folks' lunch counters, going to school and sitting in a toilet next to, like Malcolm X made fun of. He's like, how you out here fighting for public accommodations? You out here fighting to sit on the toilet next to white folks. Malcolm knew it was a scam too. But my wife's father, she's one generation removed, who was born in Macomb, Mississippi, said he remembers getting up to go to school and walking out of his little Mississippi shack in a black agricultural community and seeing a man buried from the shoulders down underground. And white folks had literally buried him with his head protruding from the ground and threw stones at his head, like some old Sharia law, the kind of stuff they're showing us images of, and just some white boys getting drunk on a random weekend. I mean, and that stood with him to this day. My great-grandmother, no, not my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother's mother, whenever she sees a white boy in sideburns, she starts to get nervous and uncomfortable, because that was the style of hair in the 40s when she was coming up, when she was coming into black womanhood, just as she was reaching puberty and starting to attract the attention of men. All the white boys would grease their hair back and wear these big sideburns. That was the style. When she started catching the eye of the white boys in Kansas, in segregated Jim Crow Kansas. It wasn't just the Deep South, it was the Midwest and up north. But I can tell you something, my sister don't have to feel that. Like, she's got a lot of problems. We all got a lot of problems, but that's not a problem no damn more. And that problem's not coming back. That problem is not, there might be some new problems we ain't anticipated yet, robots and robotic racism, algorithmic racism. But that old white folks being able to march into our community and just pick a random person in broad daylight and snatch them up and surrounded by black people just looking, not even a cop, I mean a average white citizen. So let's say this struggle against police brutality is successful. And these young people in the street fighting against, and Black Lives Matter movement and all cops are bastards and Antifa, they finally manage to back these police up off our people. And my son has a son, and he still deals with generational poverty, miseducation, capitalism, and neo-colonialism, neoliberalism, but he never sees police brutality. That's just not even a thing. That's just something he sees in history books. It ain't the promised land, but damn it, hey, you know, and they demilitarize, defund the police. The police are like the cops in Europe. They just carry batons. They don't carry military grade assault weapons. To get rid of no-knock warrants. You know, get rid of immunity, qualified immunity. If all that happened, and then the next generation comes out and say, ain't nothing changed, and then that's disrespecting the young people who are out here now getting tear gassed, getting kidnapped by federal officials and dragged off. It's disrespectful. You can acknowledge things have changed, or you can acknowledge the incremental change as you work towards fundamental change. In fact, you need to acknowledge the incremental changes, because there's two things that can happen. It can lull people to sleep, say, oh, we got this civil rights legislation. They want to go back to sleep. And if you say, well, that don't mean nothing, people look at you as like, well, you're not a sane person. I can't follow you. You mean to tell me that an average white citizen, I can sit where I want to sit. I don't have to step off the sidewalk. That my grandfather, a grown adult black man, doesn't have to bow his head and take his hat off when a 12-year-old white boy comes and addresses him and look down at his shoes. You mean to tell me that don't mean nothing? You mean to tell me nothing has changed? I mean, that's a damn significant change. It's like you got somebody who's sleeping under a bridge and then they move up into Section 8 housing, which literally, that was my childhood. We went from being homeless to having a little Section 8 basement apartment. And for some of y'all, it would have been like, oh, that's whack. That's whack. That's a whack. It was a whack apartment. But guess what? If you came and told me, oh, it ain't no different, then I would have looked at you like you're crazy. I mean, we got electricity, lights, running water, hot, cold running water. And yeah, there's some other issues here, but damn. Now we can elevate from here, but don't tell me this ain't nothing. It don't matter, because what's nothing to you could be the world to someone else. Now you don't care about reproductive rights. You don't care about the immigrants and refugee rights or LGBT. Like, I'm heterosexual. I got my citizenship. I got all this. So you ain't got a trip. But then ultimately, if you want the ultimate stuff that you pretend really matters, oh, that vote don't matter. What matters is black power, black liberation. You're going to have some of these people come along with you. You're going to have people who are refugee status and other vulnerable populations are going to have to sympathize. If not join your movement, they're going to have to sympathize with your movement. Because guess what the oppressor is going to do? As soon as you start to gain ground against the oppressor, he's going to recruit those people. That's what they did with black folks. They treated black people like garbage. But as soon as they needed to go overseas and attack people, they gave black folks uniforms and medals and say, come fight in the Imperial Army. Because that's who wins wars. Not generals, not advanced tech weapons, just the flesh and bones of the masses of the people is the only thing that can win a war for you. And I don't care if it's a political, military, ideological, cultural war. So you got to be rational. You got to be grounded. You got to be honest. And don't think acknowledging incremental change is somehow discrediting grand scale, long-term, permanent change. You don't have to deny that reforms can bring relief to people. I'm not a reformist. I think reforms is like the white man giveth and the white man taketh away. He reformed us into voting and he can reform us out of voting. He reformed us out of slavery. He can reform us back into slavery. But that means I don't rest on reform. That means I don't put all my eggs in the reform basket. But that doesn't mean I don't need to acknowledge, hey, man, Medicaid. I F's with Medicaid. I can rock with Section 8. You know, I can rock with that. Good. Give my grandma her Social Security. You know, we're moving on. So voting does change things. Liberation ain't on the ballot, so you can never vote for liberation. Liberation can only be secured by the people in the streets. But just because you can't vote for liberation does not mean you cannot secure other benefits and opportunities and reliefs. You have to be cold, distant, and calculating. When Black people engage the U.S. political system, we should have three objectives in mind. Number one, extraction. Extracting whatever benefits or resources we can get from the established order or system. Number two, harm reduction. Meaning that if one administration says we're going to drill, and if one administration says we don't acknowledge climate change and we're going to go full steam ahead with destroying the ecosystem, and the other one says, well, we're going to negotiate, or we're going to acknowledge climate change, and we're going to start to work to, I don't know, carbon tax. That's both of those are BS, utter freaking BS. But you have to ask yourself, as I am a revolutionary ecologist and I want to restore the planet's ecosystem, as I do that work, sometimes you're not voting for a representative or an ally. Sometimes you're voting for your enemy. Which one of these two enemies do I think I can fight against? Or which one of these two politicians I think is most vulnerable to be swayed? Because not only does things change with elections, I got the wrong notes. Lord have his mercy. Not only do things change with elections, what the hell? Oh, okay, here we go. Not only does things change with I just got my notes jump. Not only do things change with elections, politicians change when they're elected to office. And I just have some expanding on this whole thing and saying picking your enemies. Sometimes you want to vote for who's most vulnerable to you. Even though you don't agree with their platform, you don't agree what they have to say, which politician is most vulnerable? That means sometimes people get elected to office with one thing in mind and they end up getting flipped. One of the most progressive policy presidents in the history of the United States is Nixon, who was elected in 1969. Richard Nixon ran on a law and order ticket. He was going to bring down his fist on these rioters, these rabble rousers. He was going to lock up all the black militants. He said, you got to let these black people know that if they're going to be militant or revolutionaries, they're going to be dead militants and dead revolutionaries. He was the scum of the earth. I would have never voted for Nixon. But when Nixon got into office, his rhetoric versus his actual policies were quite stark. Now, we all know that he laid the foundation for the war on drugs, which was a tactic to subvert the black liberation struggle. But Nixon also, in 1970, did signed a bill to fund create and fund the Environmental Protection Agency. He signed the Clean Air Act. He signed in 73 the Endangered Species Act, the Marine Protection Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act. He did the Social Security Amendment that expanded Social Security benefits, not just to people over 65, but also people who had chronic illnesses and disabilities. He expanded Medicaid spending or increased Medicaid spending. He created OSHA. And I know y'all like to hate on OSHA, but if you ever worked in a high-risk environment like a level 1 trauma center or a construction site, I think you would develop a new appreciation of OSHA. He created the Consumer Product Safety Administration. I mean, legislatively, in terms of political platform, Nixon was more progressive than Obama. And I might have to do something with this slide. And Dick Gregory said that was one of the major reasons he was impeached. Because y'all see, doing crimes or committing crimes and corruption is not enough to get you impeached from the U.S. political system. He said the fact that Nixon was so afraid. Chris Hedges said Nixon felt that the revolutionaries and the activists were going to come and get him. So Nixon was an ideal enemy for progressives. You don't get everything you want in any conflict. I mean, if you're an adult or as a child, that's sometimes the first lesson you learn. You seldom get everything you want, and sometimes it's best that you don't get everything you ask for. Sometimes. But beyond that, Nixon was vulnerable. Nixon didn't have the support base that he thought he had. He ran on this concept called the silent majority. And he found out the silent majority was silent because they didn't exist. He thought all these white soldiers were going to come out of the woodwork and onward Christian soldiers and help him to restore white America and take it back from these hippies and these immigrants and these colored folks. And when he found out it wasn't, he was afraid, and they said Nixon would hide in the White House, afraid that the citizens of America were going to kick down the iron gates and come and drag him out of the White House. And so that's why he started doing all this. So not only does policy and elections change things, even if you elect someone you consider to be your enemy, and Nixon was a racist scumbag, but I mean, to this day, many of us, they're trying to undo Nixon's progressive policies that many of us have benefited from. Another person who was flipped was Lyndon Baines Johnson, 1963. He was a racist, redneck scumbag. But he passed the Civil Rights Act and the Great Society. He instituted the War on Poverty that reduced the U.S. poverty rate from 17.3% to 11.1%. And I know somebody said to me, what about black policies? If you don't have the capacity to understand taking the lead out of the gasoline, to force industries, polluting industries, to put scrubbers on their smokestacks, preventing polluting industries, farmers from dumping all of their chemical fertilizers into our waterways and our water streams. If you don't understand how that's black policy or pro-black policy, when black people are the number one victims of environmental injustice, environmental destruction, and environmental degradation and pollution. So if the United States implements pro-environment policy, then that is pro-black policy. It implements and enforces and advances. And I know some of y'all are like, oh, they still polluting. Go back and read Silent Spring. Go back and read about how there were rivers on fire. Just in the time that I've lived in Chicago, some of these strides have made to clean up the Chicago River, which was literally a cesspool full of human waste. And if we and various administrations have prioritized and deprioritized, but living in this city and going back and forth across the Chicago River all the time, and I'm going to be a revolutionary regardless, but I'd rather be a revolutionary without human excrement floating in the rivers and the lake that's close to my house than one without. If I'm able to choose between the two, I'm gonna pick the other. But JFK too. JFK, before he became a beloved president and a topic of conspiracy theorists all over the world, he was a congressman. He was a congressman during the height of Jim Crow. He entered Congress in 1947. And guess what he said about civil rights? Not a damn thing. He would focus on banking policy and stuff. But when he ran for president, the people pushed him to the left, so to speak, with the New Frontier policy. And he, at the very least, begrudgingly had to sit down and advance some of the policies of the civil rights activists and Civil Rights Act. Jimmy Carter. So it ain't just always people who are centrist or far right who get pushed to the left. Jimmy Carter got pushed to the right. Jimmy Carter, when he saw that he was starting to fall behind Ronald Reagan, he started to try to say, get tough on crime. He tried to have a more aggressive foreign policy and be more vocal against the communist and the communist threat during the Cold War. It was too little too late. But you see that politicians can't be moved long after they are elected or long after they've been in office for decades. They can be moved. Nothing is static. Everything's up for grabs, even after the election. So if there are things that interest you, because nobody goes from oppression to revolution or from oppression to liberation. Dale Jones said, revolution is a process, it's not an event. So as we work towards to retake the world, we have to acknowledge where the world is. You have to acknowledge the current reality. But if you're going to competently and deliberately redirect or change that reality, we have to do it. So again, You can engage in the political process without contradicting your revolutionary objectives. If you are cold, distant, and calculating, and you are engaged in politics for harm reduction, for resource extraction, right? And mobilization. Because if you want the Black community to be revolutionary, and you see that the Black community is married to the Democratic Party, which is a falsehood. I hate, it's disrespectful, it's anti-Black to mock and attack Black folks for being predominantly Republican. Black people, believe it or not, and I know y'all are going to think this is counterintuitive, but Black people are more competent in how we engage the US political structure than the average white person. A Black person is less likely to vote against their class interests than a white person is. But there are all Black people, where Candace Owens talk about Democratic plantation. Even though Black folks, we don't use our power like we should, we have much more. The average Black Democrat has more impact and influence than the average white Republican does in their party. For better or for worse. Now, because we're not revolutionized, because we are not conscious, we don't understand that. Malcolm X said, the white public is so split, that the white majority is so split. Half of white folks is Republican, half of white folks is Democrat, and Black folks are the tiebreakers. And he said, if we could vote as a block, and if we could come up with a policy platform and begin to enforce it and level consequences against either party, local party, national party, that fails to adhere to us, we could have more political power that far outweighs our actual numbers as a minority. How do we know? Look at the Zionist lobby. Jews make up what? 2, 3, 1%? They change the numbers all the time. But let's say they make up 2%, split the difference. And look at the amount of support the United States government gives to Israel and the Zionist movement. And most of these white politicians are just as anti-Semitic as they are racist. So why? Some of y'all say because the Illuminati and they run the banks. It's simple. They play the politics. They understand. They vote as a block. The rabbis, they have a hierarchical guided system. And they split. They're not loyal to the Democrats or the Republicans. Look at all the Jewish, how the Jewish community rallied around Obama, because Obama was a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist. And they just got right in bed with Trump. And Obama was willing to turn a blind eye to Israel Zionist atrocities and Zionist international crimes and war crimes. Obama said, I'll look the other way. Trump said, I won't look the other way. I'll cheerlead it. I'll endorse it. I'll champion it. I'll embrace it. But basically, the outcome was the same. Their approach or their styles were different, but the ultimate outcome was the same between the fascist and the neoliberal. So Malcolm X said, because some people don't want to believe this, Black people have a lot and a potential to be very powerful within the Democratic Party. Or if we all jump to the Republican, we can have that same influence. The Libertarians were considered nut jobs. Nobody in the Republican respected libertarians. But now libertarians are one of the most powerful factions within the Republican Party. Same thing goes with the evangelicals. Evangelicals were apolitical and considered to be a joke. And then here comes the moral majority. And the vast majority of Americans do not agree with the evangelical masses. Even most Republicans think the evangelicals and the libertarians are nuts. But that Tea Party was a AstroTurf organization funded by the libertarian Koch brothers. And these are people who don't give a damn about the Constitution. They don't give a damn about American democracy. They only laser focus on their agendas. And if African people will say, listen, this is our particular, and I'm going to say some things that Black people should prioritize politically. And we say, listen, We're going to be cold, distant, and calculating. We're going to do resource extraction and harm reduction. That's all our politics is. We don't give a damn if you sing our green. We don't damn, you can come to us with all the slogan, platinum plans, black people, what have you got to lose? These are the resources we seek to extract. These are our priorities for harm reduction. This is what we expect. This is what we're able to give. And before, during, and after that process, we're constantly working on Pan-African liberationist efforts. And that is just a sidebar. So we're not emotionally invested. And whenever an election cycle comes, this is the Black Revolutionary Pan-African agenda under a Biden administration. This is the Pan-African Revolutionary agenda under a Trump administration. This is the merits for supporting Trump. These are the merits of supporting Biden. And these are the merits for going third party, or this is the rationale for going third party. And we lay it out to the community. And then as the community says, that's how we move. John Henry Clark told African people decades ago, we have a kitchen table Supreme Court. We have kitchen table Congress. We need to elect our own president of Black America. So we sit and legislate our stuff in our homes, irregardless. And yeah, it's a word, damn it. Black people can make words. White folks make up words all the time, yada, yada, yada. Irregardless of what the greater society or status quo says. We've already laid out our agenda platform. We already built our political alliances. We've already set our priorities. We already defined the harm reduction. We've already assessed what's viable in this political environment or climate and what's non-viable and has a potential to become viable, or what we need to cultivate from the bottom up because it's not really viable. We need to sit down and work that out amongst ourselves to the exclusion of Democrat, Republican, the United States government and their entire cycles. And when all that's said and done, then we step out and say, okay, Black people, conscious Black people who seek to make a positive contribution to the just aspiration of your people. We lay it out. We campaign in our own community. We come and say, hey, this is the Black agenda. This is the Black platform. Here are the candidates. Here are the policies we endorse. And here's the rationale for endorsing those candidates. Go out and do it. And like I said, we have our Biden plan of action, our Trump plan of action. We have a Biden gets in and continues to be neoliberal plan of action. Biden gets in and he's able to be pushed by the left, by social justice movements and movements in the streets. Biden could end up being more left-wing or liberal than we thought, or he could end up being more conservative than we thought. He could renege on his promises for prison reform, cannabis legalization, or he can go further and go beyond and adopt the public option. Kamala might have more or less influence. Kamala might be the shadow or puppet shadow president, because we already know Biden got some cognitive things going on. So you write up a plan for the various realistic scenarios. This is not complex. This is not, I mean, it's crazy to me that there's a large segment of the Black community who thinks being able to construct and execute a well laid out plan over a span of time must mean that you are a reptile, that you are a part of secret society and you have to sacrifice babies on demonic altars. We literally attribute supernatural powers to organizations or individuals or groups that are able to construct and execute an agenda over an expanded timeline. Illuminati. Look at how they always do. They plan, organize, execute. That's magical. When it's not. If you can just get out your own ass for a second. Stop being a reactionary. I ain't voting. It ain't gonna change nothing. and sit down and do a sober reflection. And I know this kind of stuff doesn't sound as good as Black Power, ballot or the bullet, blood in the streets, freedom or death. I know that's wonderful. That rhetoric, I'm all for it. Put it on a t-shirt, scream it at the rally. But when we sit down amongst ourselves, our babies need purified water. We need some maintenance of the infrastructure in order to bring up the next generation. Our women need reproductive rights to be protected and expanded. If we're going to raise a healthy generation and be healthy enough to raise up the generation to carry out revolution. And we need to be able to communicate to our people, as Malcolm X said, clearly in a language that's easy to understand. So if Black folks says, well, the Democratic Party is going to help us, how better to invalidate that to then allow and say, okay, y'all going to go down this path. I'm going to walk with y'all. And while I'm walking with y'all, I'm going to point out all the inconsistencies and contradictions. I'm not going to stand apart from y'all or stand above y'all or stand outside y'all and yell down at y'all. In politics, in the political context, not literally, but in a political context. So show up to the meetings. And if Black folks say, well, we need to get Trump out because Trump making everything bad, say, okay, y'all want to get Trump out. Trump's out. And so like Biden's in. So I'm going to stay in dialogue with you and we're going to see what has changed. Because I know you feel better, but let's see if it's a placebo or there's actual material changes in the reality and the relationships. And then you have what is called legitimacy. I've worked on political campaigns. I know what politics can do and can't do. And I'm going to extract everything I can from my community and to advance my interest in politics. And where politics is deficient or not relevant, I'm going to exit from politics, electoral politics or mainstream politics. I go there to extract what I need and to reduce harm, and then I get on with my life. I move on with revolutionary Pan-Africanism. Sometimes, even if you're voting in your own community, it's like, listen, this guy is horrible on everything, but he has some good positions on Haiti. You know, like this Democratic Congresswoman or Democratic senator who's running here in my district, senatorial district. She's against the Iraq war. She stood against the Iraq war. And let's say that's all I can get. There's no wars or foreign aggression. That's the best thing I can hope for because everything else is hard to distinguish between her. Then sometimes that's all you got. You know, what guerrilla warfare is, you use what's available to you for as long as it's useful. And then you discard it when you're able to level up. So if all you got is some can go to raid the liquor store and make Molotov cocktails, then that's what you use. And then if you're able to break into the armory and steal some weapon, then you move up. And then say you make a foreign alliance and that they're able to ship you tanks and helicopters, then you level up and you level up. But you're not going to go straight to the guerrilla, to an established army. You got to build up to that. Read Guerrilla Warfare or Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. So I think Black revolutionaries should be engaged in the U.S. politics for resource extraction and harm reduction. And I don't think that it's a contradictory stance to say, yeah, I influence politics to the degree that I can. So now I'm going to look at, just give an example. First of all, when you vote, there's only one vote where a national election in this country, and that's the vote for president. There are literally dozens of votes. And only one of those candidates that you vote for is a national candidate. Most politics in the United States, electoral politics, are local or regional. They're not national. People tend to only focus on the presidential election. And that's where we get played. Because not only Black folks in in Chicago run the Democratic Party. the Chicago, the local chapter, because every political party has its national committee, but they also have local chapters. And those local chapters are the ones who determine who's going to run for the higher offices. So the Democrats huddle up in this city. And I've been to some of these meetings. Sometimes it's no more than 15, 20 people. It's considered a packed meeting. And they say, we're going to pull up this person, get this alderman to run for Congress, to get this congressman to run for the Senate, get this local business owner to run for mayor, get this prosecutor to run for county clerk. They handpick. And then when they go up to, they elevate up to the DLC, Democratic Leadership Committee, and the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and say, listen, these are the people we're ready to send up to you. And that's how they get picked. That's how Obama got picked. From a fake ass community organizers to a state senator to a congressman, senator, president. But Obama was birthed right here on the streets of Chicago. And if you really, I hate Obama, you could have stopped Obama. Obama was stopped. Remember, he went for Bobby Rush's seat and got beat, got spanked. So if you're really about, I hate this politician, you could stop 90% of these politicians. Now, Trump wouldn't have been able to be stopped that way because Trump already had a national program. So celebrities is a little different. But most of these politicians are not celebrities. They're rank and file members. And Obama got picked for no other reason than Obama would show up to meetings. There's nothing exceptional about Obama. And now he's got a whole staff, a person who does his wardrobe, makeup, and a whole staff. But go back and look at them old pictures of Obama. Funny, even Obama to me, to go read Dreams of My Father. Obama had low self-esteem. Obama was snorting coke and just hiding out in his dorm room. He was not an exceptional individual. He was not a remarkable individual. In fact, Obama came to power because Obama knew how to bleed into the background. He show up and just not offend anybody. That's why he's so scared now. Even now, he's trying to be Mr. Everybody's friend. So we have a potential for enormous power on the local Democratic level. But y'all, if the revolutionaries showed up, you ain't even got to come. Just show up and say, let's get this guy. Let's get this progressive. Put him for first district, state senator. What? Put this person up for water reclamation. And just start to cultivate these people. Infiltration. And we think, is infiltrating sellout? Does the CIA sell out when they infiltrate the Black Panther Party? Do they do it? Does that make the CIA selling out American capitalism and imperialism? Are y'all really about warfare? Again, go read and study warfare. I digress, because I know y'all want to hear about how Babylon's going to fall. We love to talk and imagine about the fall of our oppressors, but we don't like to deal with the details because they're not as romantic and sexy. And we might have to admit that we have some vulnerabilities, and we might have to admit that there's some of this incremental stuff and some of this bureaucratic, non-sexy, non-exciting stuff. And we love to show the Black Panthers in the streets with the shotgun. But all of the research and discussion and planning and coordinating that went on, nobody's going to make a movie about coordination. And every single Panther, there are so many Black Panthers that have given their verbal testimony or wrote down their biographies, and they all say, I went to the Black Panther office saying, give me a gun, and they handed me some books. I thought I'd be in the street fighting against my oppressors, and I was sitting in a room looking over political platforms and making flyers for an electoral campaign. But those ain't to say, and all of them had to do it. I remember Che Guevara would complain about in his writings about the tedious work of revolution. And y'all think, Dale Jones said revolution is a process, it's not an event, and revolution is an intellectual exercise. But let's go over the ballot tomorrow. I'm going in to vote tomorrow, and I'm about to tell y'all who I'm voting for, just to see how a revolutionary would vote in his oppressor's system. For president, I'm voting for Gloria La Riva and Leonard Peltier, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Leonard Peltier is currently serving a life sentence in federal prison, but he's on the U.S. ballot for president as a vice presidential candidate. Go look up Eugene Debs. Eugene Debs ran for president while from a prison cell and got over 1 million votes. So if we really started to mobilize, and what do they do? If Leonard Peltier and who is the vice presidential candidate for the Socialist Party, just got the votes of all the militant black people who said they ain't voting. If those votes were there, that would be a shock to this system. And what the system does is repression or capitulation. They were like, wow, people are really, that's what's really going off the reservation looks like. So they're going to first try to repress. And if repression doesn't work, they come with capitulation. They try to negotiate. Or as, who said it? God dog it. I forgot who said this quote. But they said, oh, Dale Jones. How could I forget that? Dale Jones said, when white folks lose the war, they start to work on winning the peace. You can lose a war and win the peace. So I'm going to vote for the Party for Socialism and Liberation, not as a protest, but that's genuinely whose platform I support. For most of the election, I was on with Howie Hawkins. But then I found a more radical, and it's on the ballot. You can vote for the Socialist Liberation Party. Leonard Peltier is a Native American who's in jail for being accused of killing 2 FBI agents. Killing 2 FBI agents as a prominent member of AIM, or the American Indian Movement. That's what I'm voting for. For U.S. representative, I'm going to be voting for Bobby Rush for Congress, because the alternative is disgusting. And I mean, it's a black woman running against Bobby Rush as a Republican. Her name is Philistine. I know I'm mispronouncing her name, but go look at her website. She's a black woman MAGA, a nut, a lunatic. Now, I worked to unseat Bobby Rush. There were 2 progressive candidates running against Bobby Rush. My wife worked on the campaign of a woman who tried to unseat Bobby Rush in the primary. She consulted on a campaign. My wife and I literally worked to get Bobby Rush out of that seat. And now here it is. And we did that. When was the primaries? Back in April? We worked to get him out back in April. And here I am turning around to vote for him in November. That's politics. If you're and again, I have to say, I'm voting in this instance for resource extraction and harm reduction. So I'm going to be voting for Bobby Rush. Even though, and then in the next 2 years, if a progressive candidate emerges to unseat him in the primary, I'm going to work to unseat him again. Water Reclamation District. There are 3 open seats on the Water Reclamation District here. And this is something I don't know if it's unique to Chicago, but I've never seen it. I've been a resident of New York and Missouri, and I haven't seen a but water reclamation districts are basically, I can talk about it. If y'all don't know what it is, you can Google it, but it's basically people who are tasked with water safety and sewage removal. And because Chicago had such serious issues. Remember, I mentioned the Chicago River with sewage and water quality, that they created an independent political body. And it's not even it's metropolitan, but it's a state agency that and you get to vote for the commissioners who basically oversee water quality, water safety, removal, and management of wastewater and things. But there are 3 Democrats and 3 Green Party candidates on for it. And there's 6 candidates running for the Water Reclamation District. I will be voting for 3 Green Party members. Vincent, Hernandez, and Wales. They are Green Party candidates. I will be voting Green. For Cook County Clerk, I will be voting for Iris Martinez for a clerk. She's a Democrat, and the reason is because she does have a record of anti-corruption, some other issues, but I don't really have. And then you can vote for the retention of all these judges. You get to vote for judges, vote them in or out. So I'm not going to go over, but you're going to be able to vote for appellate court, judicial circuit judge, in Illinois Supreme Court judge. You can get to vote for senator. I will be voting for David Black, Green Party, for my senator in the U.S. Senator. And I'm going to be voting in Kim Foxx, who is not the worst. She's not the best, not the worst. But Kim Foxx has made some progressive strides. She's fallen short a few. I think she plays more politics than she has to. She has the support of the people, but I think she still wants to play footsies with the establishment too much. And she's not going hard enough against the police, but she's taking heat. The one thing you got to know is, like Bobby Wright said, when all white folks are against you, you're doing something right, and white folks hate her. If you go to Kim Foxx's page, there's all these racist Chicagoans who hate her freaking guts. They feel like she's anti-police. I will be happily, like all my Green Party votes, my Socialist and Liberation Party votes, I'm very happy with those votes. And I've got, what, 1, 2, I'm going to be voting for 2 Democrats. I'm going to be voting for 2 Democrats. The rest will be third-party opposition candidates. And this is another thing. On ballots are not just politicians. On this ballot tomorrow, I will be able to vote on repealing the flat tax, which I will be voting against the flat tax. Ain't got nothing to do with no party, no politician. Do we want a graduated tax in the city of the state of Illinois, or a flat tax? Flat tax are conservative wet dreams. A flat tax are unjust. So I'm going to be voting for a graduated, or AKA, they call it a graduated tax because the word progressive is poison, but the term is tax. I will be voting in favor of a constitutional amendment to repeal the flat tax and to implement a graduated or progressive tax system. There's also a ballot measure for broadband access, which I will be supporting the ballot measure on broadband access. There's another like weirdly worded motion to the goals of resilience, equity, and diversity. So there's a policy saying that that developers and city planners and all city publicly funded or publicly administered projects will have to prioritize equity, diversity, and resiliency or sustainability, which I agree, but they didn't really lay out the enforcement mechanism. I have to look more on that, but on the surface, I'm going to say yes. And then there's another ballot on the ballot. You say laws don't mean nothing, where they want to restrict assault weapons and magazine size. And I know a lot of you, these anti-vote, I don't vote, it don't mean nothing. A lot of y'all are really into y'all guns because y'all, even though y'all won't just do basic politics for your interests, you claim you're ready for an armed insurgency. Well, now, because you don't vote, then all these liberals are going to be able to determine what type of guns you can buy and what magazine size and what you can legally have, because illegally you can do whatever you want, you know. So that's going to be on the ballot. Assault weapons regulation restrictions and limiting the number of rounds and magazine size for certain types of guns in the city of Chicago and the entire state of Illinois. So all this stuff is on the ballot. So this ain't about Trump and Biden. This is about articulating. And here's the thing, even if everybody I vote for loses, which I'm very accustomed to that. I'm very accustomed to the politicians and platforms that I support losing in this country because my ideas and interests don't align with this country. But let me tell you something. The people who rule over us, our oppressors, watch our engagement. Our level of engagement is more important than the outcome of our engagement. If they start seeing more Black people are paying attention and showing up, that's going to cause them to have to make some adjustments. And again, they go from repression to capitulation. So all I'm saying is, and I know I've lost a lot of y'all because y'all really, it's your identity. You feel that it's the most radical thing in the world to not vote. But I say employ revolutionary tactics. And on Monday's show, I'm going to talk to y'all about what my plan is. Because when I attacked Ice Cube and all these other black folks coming up with agendas for black people, everybody said to me, well, what are you doing? Why don't you do something? You talking about Ice Cube, you need to do something. So what I'm going to do for y'all is tell y'all what the Bro Diallo Pan-African Revolutionary Plan is. And y'all can tell me if y'all want to get behind my contract. Not contract. I'm not trying to enter into a contract with no fascist government, with no overt racist fascist government. I want to enter into a revolutionary struggle with my people. So I'm going to tell you where my priorities are and the agenda, and I'm not going to be talking no pie in the sky, rain down hellfire on the oppressor. I'm going to tell you incremental stuff we can start doing today. And my plan, my revolutionary plan, won't even require you to risk your life. You know, it's practical, pragmatic, and viable. So we're going to talk about Bro Diallo's plan. And the only reason I'm bringing it up, because I got the plans. The only reason, because everybody, when I said Ice Cube is full of it, Ice Cube's a cool. Every time I said something about Ice Cube, all these dudes going to come to me and be like, what are you doing? What would you do? What's your plans? I'm going to tell y'all my plan after the election next Monday. And I'm going to be speaking with Kalunji Chaga. But you know, at me across social media, I'll tell y'all everything because I got a few things coming up. And I'm my time is the hour is nigh. So thank you for listening to the Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, the quarantine remote broadcast. Shout out to everyone that helped me. My listeners and relatives got me this equipment and the software to be able to sit all the way here on the South Side and broadcast my radio signal all the way to the radio signals and across the world from my humble abode here on the South Side of Chicago. And, you know, as opposed to going all the way up to that nice fancy neighborhood where the Q4 studios is. Okay, I know John's listening, thinking I'm talking crazy. But anyway, I appreciate y'all being here with me. Shout out to my supporters. Shout out to, most of all, to my Patreons. And even if you're not a Patreon, please shout out and give thanks to my Patreon. If you enjoy the show, like, share, subscribe, share the show. Get the word out about the Bro Diallo Show so we can expand our listenership and expand the dialogue and research. And that's it. I guess we're going out. Oh, I didn't say what the music was. This morning we started off with It Ain't All Good, De La Soul with Shaka Khan. It ain't all good. And I played one of my favorite songs, Stay on Your Toes, because that's what, it ain't all good out here. And we need to stay on our toes. And that was Delta Funky Homo Sapien and A+. One of my favorite lines of any hip hop song, where A+ said, I be trying to build with the closed-minded, but they be so blinded, I get upset and they get closed-minded. I feel that, you know, I feel that verse trying to talk to hard-headed people. So that was Stay on Your Toes, Del Jones. Delta Funky Homo Sapien, Stay on Your Toes, and It Ain't All Good by De La Soul featuring Shaka Khan, because it ain't all good in politics and we got to stay on our toes. And I'm going to close out with Jungle Brothers, Straight Out the Jungle, and I will see y'all Monday morning with the next broadcast of the Bro Diallo Show, where I'm going to tell you if I had the kind of power, money, and influence of Ice Cube, and even without the power, money, and influence that Ice Cube had, I'm going to lay out my plan, because everybody asking me, I can't talk down on Ice Cube's plan, because what am I doing? So y'all gonna hear about what I propose to the community and the stuff I'm struggling, working my scrawny fingers to the bone, you know, to try to implement. So y'all gonna hear yet again, you've heard it before, but you're gonna hear it again, laid out, the Bro Diallo agenda for Black America. Anyway, Jungle Brothers, Straight Out the Jungle. At least it's supposed to be. Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll see y'all Monday morning. And get out and vote, goddammit.